Yalimadat, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, so I can see the slide deck. So, a very good evening and Yalimadat to all of you. Uh, Let me just switch on my video as well. Yalimadat, everybody, and I hope all of you are stay safe and taking care of yourselves. And thanks a lot for again turning out in large numbers for the second edition of our webinar, our series called Udaan, which is for guiding students who want to pursue higher education in Canada. And today's topic is something that is in demand and probably the most requested topic we have had as education board, which is the whole information sharing around funding and scholarships for traveling to Canada. And we are privileged to again have the support of education board for Canada, as well as some esteemed speakers from AKEB Canada for taking us through these sessions. Before I go on to the next slide and introduce our speakers, just a couple of housekeeping requests. We will be having a lot of time for Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box, and we'll be coming to the questions at the end, and we'll make sure we'll try to answer as many as we can. I can't promise we'll answer all because we have a lot of people on the webinar, but we will try to answer all the questions. We will also make the slide deck and the recordings available to you once we have the consent of the speakers. So feel free to make notes, but we will also be sharing the details with you subsequently. And I'll request Nahida to skip to the next slide so I can introduce the speakers. So we have the privilege of having two esteemed speakers from Education Board Canada. The first is Aleem Musa, an MBA graduate from Queen's University, and he also has an undergrad degree in finance from University of Lethbridge. He's worked in the banking industry for 14 years in various capacities. Currently, he's working as a senior private banking advisor, responsible for advising high net worth families on complex financial planning matters. And he's also volunteered on many boards and portfolios, including the World Partnership Walk and the Economic Planning Board. He's been a member of the funding portfolio for the last 3 years, which is why he's absolutely the right person to talk about funding in Canada. And the next speaker is Anis Umaid Ali from who's a CIM, a Chartered Investment Manager, as well as a portfolio manager. He's completed his IB from Lee Po Chan United World College of Hong Kong, where he spent his formative years among students of 60 different nationalities. This experience fundamentally shaped his global outlook that continues to inform his worldview and his investment strategies. Anis has graduated from the University of Alberta in 2005 with a degree in actuarial science and a minor in business, and he began a career in the wealth management industry. In an effort to give back to the community, Anis lends his expertise to various boards and charitable foundations. He is currently the chairman of the Economic Planning Board for Edmonton. He is also a past board member for the Grants and Review Board. So as you can see, we have two extremely eminent speakers and absolutely the right people to take us through the next 40-45 minutes of information sharing on the on scholarships and funding. So I'll hand it over to Anis. Uh, Over to you.
Thank you for having us today. It's a pleasure speaking to our close family in India. Hope everyone's keeping well. For today, Anis and I will be going back and forth on different areas of expertise, and looking forward to a lot of questions at the end. So please save them, and we will try to answer. So for today, our overview is that we'll be touching on these 7 items. There's cost of studies, funding opportunities, work integrated and co-op opportunities, job opportunities, how to create budgets, some tips for parents and students. And then we have 2 great teammates that are going to be sharing a story on their journey through the education that they've encountered. I'll pass it over to Anis for the next slide.
Yalimadad, everyone, and just echoing Aleem's comments as well about being with the family in India, and hopefully everybody's keeping safe. It's Mother's Day in Canada as well, so happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. And in anticipation of Eid, happy Eid Mubarak as well. The topic is very relevant in a sense that Canada is a quite favorable destination for international students from across the world. And it's also very relevant in a sense that it's quite an endeavor when you are taking on a journey to come to a different country and embarking on a journey that's going to define your career, that's going to define your pathway, that's going to define your life in a lot of sense. So it's great that there's tremendous amount of interest that you are taking into learning about what the cost of studies and living in Canada would be. And the cost is actually quite variable from province to province, from city to city, from school to school. Depends a lot on whether you're taking an undergraduate program or a graduate program. Depends on the ranking of the school, the program you're going to end up taking within a particular school, whether it's a diploma program, it's a certificate program, it's a degree program, it's a professional degree program, it's a co-op program, or it's a work integrated learning. So the costs are very variable across these different factors, and they do play quite a bit of role in terms of determining what your overall cost of education in Canada ends up being. Tuition in Canada happens to be generally lower than that of Australia, US, and UK, and that makes Canada a very attractive destination. However, Canada also happens to have some of the most expensive cities in the world to live in as well, especially Vancouver and Toronto. So when you are making your decision in terms of where you want to come, where you want to live, and where you want to study in Canada, you have to make sure you're very well prepared, you're very well planned, and you have started these preparation and these planning procedures much earlier than when you intend to come to Canada. We have also shared a resource in our slide deck, which we will be sharing with you, which will give you a very good indication of what the cost of living in Canada by provinces and territories and across some of the cities as well. We can go to the next slide. This gives us a very good overview of what the cost of education per year is across Canada, from East Coast all the way to West Coast. You can see that the range varies, especially on the undergraduate side, from $12,000 on the low side all the way to a little bit over $38,000 on the high side. And on the graduate side, it starts from around $4,000 on the low side all the way to somewhere close to about $24,000 on the high side. So it's quite varies across provinces and across schools. And on average, you are looking at an undergraduate tuition cost of $29,714, close to about 30,000 Canadian dollars. And at the graduate level, you are looking at a cost of about 17,744, or close to about 18,000 Canadian dollars a year. And remember that these costs will vary based on the program and the institution. Again, we will be sharing a resource, and you will be able to go to individual universities' websites and stuff to check their specific costs. But just to give you a bit of an idea, an indication of what these costs could be, this particular slide is coming from Queen's University's international students website. And that tells you about what just the cost of books and supplies could be per year. And this ranges anywhere between $1,500 to close to about $5,000, depending on the program and the school. And you can see that the cost actually varies. It's a much lower when it comes to programs like art and science, but it's almost like double, more than double for programs like School of Medicine. So when you are making a decision on what program of study you are going to choose, this could be a very determining factor in terms of what your books and supplies cost is going to look like. Again, this is an example from Queen's University for an undergraduate program for a full year. And just look at the very last column on the far right side of things. And you could see what a typical undergraduate program fee looks like for a full-time student. For an engineering and applied sciences program, it could be almost close to about $26,000. For an arts and sciences program, it's actually close to about $24,000. And for a business commerce program, it could be close to about $26,000. The reason we actually are also sharing this particular information is because it gives us a very good indication of what the cost has been over the last 4 to 5 years. If you look at the cost in 2017 for the engineering and applied sciences program, it was actually close to about $22,755, which now has increased to about $25,463. That's a more than 10% rise in cost over that time period. And that tells you that the tuitions are not set in stone. The cost of the tuition is not set in stone. It could vary from year to year, and that variance will play a tremendous role in terms of how you're budgeting the cost of studies in Canada. That 10% variance could come back, and if that variance is a lot more than 10% or 15%, it could effectively really throw off your budget, right? So even when we're budgeting and we are preparing and we're planning, we are also recommending and encouraging that you include these kind of variance scenarios within your planning, so that when these kind of shocks that come to you from a cost perspective, you're able to address them and you're able to absorb them quite effectively. We can go to the next slide. Again, from the Queen's University, but here I wanted to highlight the cost of tuition for the medicine program. That is almost double the cost of the previous programs you saw. As well as the Faculty of Law, if you look at that program is also costing considerably higher than some of the other average programs. And that tells you that there will be some programs like medicine, like law, where the cost of education is going to be significantly higher than the rest of the programs. So if you're planning to go into medical sciences, if you're planning to go into law, you have to budget for these additional cost of tuition, and make sure that you're planning and preparing for these additional costs from much earlier. So what a typical expense sheet looks like when you're living in Canada. Obviously, one of your highest costs is the cost of accommodation. And in Canada, you will have choices to live either on campus or off campus. And costs could vary significantly depending on where you end up living. Some of the on-campus plans also offer meals, and some of those meals are either mandatory, some of them will have flexibility. So when you are making a choice, choose wisely. Choose wisely because let's say if you're someone who doesn't wake up early and is constantly missing, let's say, breakfast meals and stuff, you're sometimes wasting a little bit of money in that sense. At the same time, If you are living off campus and you are in a very hot market, rental market like Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver, remember that you're also competing with the public for rents. And those rents can significantly increase year over year, right? So if you're not budgeting for those kind of rent increases, if you're not aware of some of those trends, they can also throw off your budget. So the dynamic of living, whether on campus or off campus, can significantly play a very important role in the cost of living in Canada. Food is also very, very big factor of your overall budget and cost. Depending on whether you're coming to Canada on your own or you're coming with a family as a married person with kids, the food cost can vary significantly depending on the number of people there are in your household. And then there are a lot of miscellaneous expenses that will come, like cell phone cost, clothing, laundry, recreation, personal expenses. And then there's transportation costs as well. So for example, in some universities, transportation cost is actually embedded in your tuition cost, and it's mandatory for you to pay. For some others, they are not. Very similar to the universal health insurance plan for international students. Most of the universities will charge you that fee, even if you are not using the medical services, right? So just be very well aware of what these costs are at different universities for different programs at different undergraduate and graduate level, and have that kind of clarity so that when you're budgeting for your schooling, you are very well aware of what your living costs are going to be. Now, overall, the living costs could be anywhere between $12,000 to $30,000 a year. And the cost of books and supplies could easily be somewhere between $2,000 to $2,500 per year on average. Now, these are fairly wide range, and it depends on your program of study, on your city of living, on your school. But it's very important for you to know and understand these costs so that you have your blind spots covered. So let's just take a typical scenario of a student who is interested in pursuing a Bachelor's of Education program in 2021 in Canada. He's single and he will be living alone. And you're considering 3 institutions across 3 different provinces in Canada. You're looking at McGill University in Montreal, Quebec. You're looking at Mount Royal University in Calgary, Alberta. And you're looking at Vancouver Island University in Nanaimo, British Columbia. And you can see that despite variances in tuition cost and living costs, the costs are actually coming out to be fairly close to each other. But in some cases, it's the living cost which is the bigger factor. And in some case, it's the tuition fee which is the bigger factor, right? So again, giving you a bit of an idea of depending on where you're going to end up living, depending on the school you're going to go to, depending on the program you're going to take, your cost is going to vary significantly. And you can see that you are somewhere between 39 to 40,000 in terms of your average cost at an undergrad level for a typical program in Bachelor's of Education. We also wanted to share a bit of an information in terms of what the exchange rate has been between Canadian dollar and Indian rupee over the last 5 years. And you can see that the Canadian dollar has been rising against Indian rupee over the last 5 years quite significantly. In fact, the year-over-year change is close to about 10%. And this can play a significant role in terms of how quickly the cost of studying and living in Canada can go up on you, right? So when you're factoring your budget, when you're factoring your planning, when you're factoring your savings, to prepare for coming to Canada, you should also factor in the exchange rate and what the exchange rate could be in the next few years, kind of thing, what the trends are, and whether you're prepared to address those changes and absorb those changes. Just go to the next slide. So we're looking at an exchange rate of $1 Canadian to about 61 Indian rupee. And if we're looking at the low end of cost of education in Canada, it's around 30,000 Canadian dollars, which turns out to be close to about 1.83 million Indian rupees. And if you look at the high end of the cost, it's somewhere between $65,000 to about $75,000. We're looking at 65,000 in this particular example. It turned out to be about close to about 4 million Indian rupees, 3.965. So if we just run a very simple scenario that I'm going to give myself 10 years to save close to about these amounts. And if I start to save on a monthly basis and I'm earning a rate of return of about 4% on that saving, how much would I need to save on a monthly basis in Indian rupees, although it's showing here in dollar, but in Indian rupees, how much it's gonna take me? So on the low end side of things, you're saving close to about 12,500 Indian rupees per month. And on the high end side of things, you're saving close to about 27,000 rupees per month, right? So it gives you a very, very good indication of what the monthly saving plans could be. If you're planning to come to Canada, if you're planning to study in Canada, how long it could take you to build these kind of savings. So now I'll pass it on to Aleem to talk a little bit more about how would you actually fund some of these expenses.
Thanks, Anis. I'm glad you're in the portfolio management career because that was a lot of numbers and very helpful. So I'm sure the students really appreciated that. On the funding side, Anis talked about the programs, the costs that are involved, and how expensive they can get year over year. So it's really important to look at how you're going to pay for all this stuff. There's obviously the savings platform, so you have time to save if you can. But you also have scholarships that you can look for. So we always recommend people to, look at different opportunities, look at the school that you're wanting to go to, see what's available. Because at the end of the day, we don't want you to come to Canada and, there's not a proper plan in place. So it's important to look for those scholarships and funding opportunities. There are also employment and co-op opportunities. So while you're in school, you have the opportunity to look for a program that offers work experience. So, it's important to find a school that gives you an opportunity to get live experience while you're in school. Some people look for jobs when they get here. It's always good to be a little bit conservative because there's limited jobs for a lot of people. So, that is sort of a hard one to guess before you get here. And then obviously there's the loan program. So in the institutions, we do have a couple of programs that are available, which I'll speak to. And then there's also bank loans that you can look to for funding your education. Next slide, please. So from a scholarship front, I'm always a big fan of getting free money. Schools, organizations, a lot of companies really are promoting education. There are a lot of criteria that are relevant for scholarships, but it's good to go through some of these links that we've provided and see if anything will provide some funding for your education. It's good to look at this stuff in advance because it just makes you better prepared, and you have time potentially right now before you start school. And these deadlines really come quick, so it's always good to keep ahead of this stuff. We will be sharing these slides, so you'll have these links But if you go to the school that you're interested in, and there's always different links available on their website for scholarships. So really important to look at this stuff before you come to Canada. Next slide, please. So financial aid. So this is important. Anytime a student wants to go to school, the university or college that you're attending, they always have a resource in the school that helps you figure out the best way to apply for funding. So we really recommend that people contact their institution and speak to their financial aid office, before you come or after you get here, because they're a great resource. There's things that they see that they can probably point out to you. There's different programs that they're aware of that maybe we haven't passed on to you. So it's really important. We have this little slide where once we share it, you'll be able to click the links and see which schools are offering financial aid assistance. And it's a great resource to contact them when you're planning to come to school in Canada. Next slide, please. So the co-op piece of studies is important. So co-op meaning you're in school and you're trying to find work experience that relates to your program. So if you're in an accounting designation, you would get an internship or a side sort of hourly job at a accounting firm. What it does is it gives you live first-hand experience. You speak to people that have already graduated. Sometimes, fortunately or unfortunately, people realize that this is a lot of hard work, and they would prefer doing a different job. So I think it gives you an opportunity to see live what the job looks like, what you're going to be doing every day. We're a little bit spoiled in our the family that we have, is that Ismailis can really look to the community with all the resources and partnerships. When you go to Jamaat Khana in the future, hopefully you can speak to fellow Ismailis and figure out what they're doing, get some ideas, build partnerships. And sometimes when you're looking for a job and you don't know anyone, you talk to a fellow Ismailis and they'll put you in the right spot. They'll introduce you to someone. So we are really spoiled in that area. Next slide, please. So for co-op programs, most likely you'll require a few criteria that we've outlined here. It's important to get these requirements set up well in advance, so you're not restricted from doing a co-op program. Each college and university that you potentially would want to go to will provide the specific criteria for their program in the specific links. So when you're ready to get into a co-op program, it's good to just do some research and speak to your school about what they require to get into the program. So the international students who want to go to the co-op program, if you want a work permit or you need a work permit, you'll need these 4 criteria that are outlined. So it's good to take note of that before you get into a specific program. Next slide, please. So I'll pass it over to Anis, and he'll just speak to some job opportunities and links that are available.
Thank you, Aleem. Besides the co-op and work integrated learning opportunities that you have available through some of the programs, there are also many different resources that are available to you when you are in Canada, specifically by the federal and provincial governments. You are also allowed to obtain work permit, which, if I'm not mistaken, gives you 20 hours per week work hours. But if you basically look at what the average wage is across the country, you might be able to cover somewhere between $10,000 to $13,000 of your total expenses if you are planning to work according to those hours. And that still will leave you considerably short of what your total expenses are going to be. When you're looking for those work and job opportunities, either while you're in school or after you graduate, these are some of the resources that we're sharing with you. But this gives you a bit of an overall general idea of where to actually go and look for work or look for these job opportunities. The very first one is the federal government's website. Government of Canada actually runs its own job bank and publishes job opportunities across Canada. They also have a job bank just to work for the federal government itself. Then there will be career centers and resources at your own school. Depending on where you end up in terms of your program, there will be a career guidance counselor, career resources, a very likely you will also have an international student center, and they may have their own career guidance and counseling resource available as well. So the key thing is to really utilize and maximize the resources that are available to you wherever you are going for schooling. There will be job fairs that are now totally online, and they usually happen at a recurring interval. So if you are looking for jobs, you should be looking at these job fairs and applying with potential employers right there. Then there are job search websites like Indeed, Monster, and Workopolis. And one important resource that I would actually like to bring to you is our own community's resource through IA Canada's website. So IA Canada is Ismaili Institutions Canada's website, and it's a very resourceful, very powerful tool for you to have and to look into. And there is an economic planning board section in there. When you go there, we do publish job opportunities across Canada on regular basis on that particular website as well. If you look into the Skills and Employment Program or SCP program of EPB or Economic Planning Board, you will find resources that can help you with your resumes, that can help you with your interview taking skills, that can help you in connecting with different professionals, and that can also provide tremendous amount of resources and information on where to find and where to look for jobs, connecting you with different organizations within the communities, like let's say BC Job Connect or Edmonton Mennonite Center for New Immigrants and things like that. Then there are resources that are available through provincial governments. For example, in Alberta, we have Alberta Learning Information Systems, or ELIS website. It's a tremendous website with a lot of resources, including the job bank. But it also gives you an idea of what are some of these careers that are hot. What are these careers that are more employable compared to some of the other programs of studies, right? So it becomes a very, very relevant information in terms of what you are choosing also as a program. Is your program employable? Is your program coming from a reputable university? And is your program on a bit of a pathway which has the future of work? So those things, government and private institutions put a lot of work and research out there, and that's available to you. And if you basically look into these resources, it'll give you a very good idea and will give you a very good indication of the kind of programs of study that you want to pick into and the kind of schools that you want to go into. Then there will be individual institutions and companies and government institutions which will have their own websites. Like, for example, Public Health Ontario has its own website which publishes all jobs that are available for nurses and doctors and medical professionals. Same thing with Alberta Health as well, that publishes very similar kind of opportunities. So there are tremendous amount of resources available, as Aleem just indicated, that you can also connect with Jamaati members. And one of the ways to do it is by volunteering. And volunteering not only within the community, but also outside the community through international, international student centers and stuff like that. But really, that helps you to network, that helps you connect, and that will really help build a vast network of people that can help you with your jobs, with your employment opportunities while you're in school, as well as once you graduate out. So this is just the snapshot of the ALICE website through Government of Alberta, and you can see that it has job postings, but it has like a lot of other resources available as well in terms of what are some of the wages and salaries of a typical program. What are some of the occupations that are going on in Alberta right now? What are the trends? And there are networking resources, there are resume building and career counseling resources that are all available to the resident of that particular province through the government. So it's very different in terms of either we go to civil society institutions, or we can also access government institutions for both employment help as well as resources.
So for the funding programs to the institutions, I think some of you may have already known about one, that's the Tsp program, but that's offered through India. So it's something where I would highly encourage you to speak to your local team who can provide a little bit more clarity than I can. But from a international scholarship program, if you're living in Canada and you're trying to do a graduate level program, so a master's or a PhD program, you may be eligible to apply for the ISP program. And the details are outlined here. I won't sort of read line by line because I'm sure you guys can. But I would say, there is a small window for applying for this. But also it's important to know is that the actual funding of this program, there are some criteria that are involved, but also we can't give money to everybody, right? So it'll be people that are showing top tier performance and really have researched their program, have done well in the undergraduate space, and also work experience, volunteer experience. So it's important to develop your skill sets early so that when you apply for these kinds of programs that you feel like you're missing something. So it's really good to develop this stuff. So we work with you and sort of help you develop the different aspects of your resume so that you're a qualified candidate. Next slide is creating budgets. So Anis is well versed in this area, so I'll let him run with this one.
As I was saying, that plan and prepare as early as you can. So this is just a quick snapshot of what are some of your expenses could be when you are living and studying in Canada, and this is a generic sort of snapshot, but preparing the budget is a very, very important exercise before you even start out the school, because it gives you a very realistic picture of what your cost and what your expenses are going to look like. right? And you will have a very clear idea of how much money you're going to need to live and study in Canada. Always create an estimated cost and an actual cost so you can know and understand the variances and where the variances are coming from, what the sources of variances are, and always leave a bit of a room for these kind of variances and emergencies. One of the things that I mentioned previously as well is that your cost of tuition can rise mid-year without any warning, right? And if you are ready to address those kind of variances and challenges, you will be very well prepared. So just make sure that you start preparing for these budgeting exercises like 2 or 3 years prior to you deciding to come to Canada, so that you can see where some of these tuition costs are going and how they're changing, and start preparing for it before you come to Canada. We have also shared some budget planning resources on this worksheet, which you will be able to access and use these tools to help you plan and budget. So some of the tips for parents and students. The very first thing we would say is do your homework. Assess your finances in order to establish which schools and programs are within your family's budget, right? And plan and start preparing for these programs much earlier. I would recommend that at least 3 to 5 years prior to you decide to come to Canada. Also plan and prepare in terms of where to apply, how to apply, right? Can I use a universal application program like they have in Ontario to apply to 3 schools in one time and save myself some application fee, right? Also remember that there might be a separate fee for applying to school, and there might be a separate fee for applying to the residence, right? There could be a significant difference in terms of getting the fee waived for the school's application and stuff. So start planning and preparing early so that you can prepare for all of these steps much before you go to school, and have a game plan how you are going to pay for your living and studies in Canada. Have a game plan with your family, right? Whether it's going to be a combination of savings and loans and work and internships and scholarships and bursaries and grants and loans, right? What that combination is going to look like, right? And how would we address emergencies if they come, like medical emergencies that could happen, right? So have a game plan with your family, have all the stakeholders on board. So there's a clear and effective communication between all of you, so that when things happen that you are not anticipating or that wasn't expected, you are well prepared for it. And look for free money. There's tons of free money that is available within your schools through scholarships, through grants, through bursaries. And scholarships are academic and merit-based, but grants and bursaries, they're sometimes, and in most cases, they're need-based. All you have to do in most cases is actually just apply and fill a form, right? So when you're doing your research, look for these free money that are available through your institution, through financial aid programs, and different scholarship programs. Track your spending. Track your spending, understand where the cost is and where your money is going, from your textbooks to your tuition, all the way to the takeout food and lattes, because they all add up. And then find the areas where you may be able to cut costs and create some savings, because that's going to help you. As I said previously, budget for emergencies and surprises. Understand your on-campus versus off-campus living. Sometimes off-campus living is cheaper, but could be very stressful. You're dealing with landlords. You're dealing with shared accommodation. You're dealing with lease agreements. You're dealing with utilities issues. You're dealing with laundry issues, which might not be on the residents, right? So there are many factors that you need to understand and to plan for when you're living in Canada. And then use the iCanada website because there are tremendous amount of resources that are available on that website. There's an education board section in there. There's economic planning board section in there, and there's a lot of information available on there in terms of how to build your credit in Canada, how to file taxes in Canada, how to prepare a budget for yourself. And all of those resources are available to you. So utilize them. And then international student centers are also a very important and very powerful resource because there are people who are in very similar kind of situation that you are in. And they may have figured few things out that you may not have, right? So you can learn from other people's experiences and other people's mistakes, right? So international student centers also provide tremendous amount of resources in terms of counseling, in terms of tips, in terms of resources and sharing of those resources. So access the resources that are available to you through your universities, and also keep an eye on the cost of inflation and exchange rate because that can have a really large impact on your tuition costs and on your living costs. So if you keep that in mind, you can be a lot well prepared for your budget and have a lot less stressful and a lot more pleasure studying and living experience in Canada.
Yeah, Sohail here. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Yes, so we've also had a lot of questions about options in India for education. And as Aleem and Anis spoke about, there is the tertiary scholarship program, which I would suggest you speak to your local education board, the members. There is also the AKF ISP, which in fact the process for the current cycle is the selection process is on. Apart from that, there are also a lot of education loans and a lot of options out there. There is a big spurt in the startups in India in the education financing space, but the interest rates they offer are typically quite higher compared to what you would get from a bank. One of the options we see, which we have recommended to a lot of students, and they have taken advantage of, is the SBI, the State Bank of India education loan. They give loans for both students as well as scholarship loans. The graduate eligibility is for students from the 12th standard and above, and it could be either for your undergraduate or your postgraduate or professional level. Based on the feedback we have, since it's a state-owned bank, typically it's a little bit bureaucratic and the paperwork involved is fairly intense. But it's a good loan, and the interest rates are very competitive. And as you can see on the slide, it ranges from 9.3 to 12.5%. It depends on the kind of course you're doing, also the quality of the university you're looking at. But because it's a state-owned enterprise and it's funded by the government, they are a little lenient in terms of the collateral required and in terms of uh, the eligibility criteria. So this is something again we'll be sharing across in the slides. This is something I would encourage all students to look at. The State Bank of India education loan is something which has been availed of by many students, and they have benefited from it. The only caveat here is it's a little bureaucratic. Paperwork is fairly intense, but hang in there. I think if you're ready to do the rounds, it's a good product that is worth availing. I'll hand it over back to Aleem and Anis.
So we have the pleasure of two students who are going through their journey currently, and they've agreed to share their experiences. From the picture, they look very serious, but they're very happy to be in Canada. I can confidently say that. So first, we'll go with Inara, who's a fourth year undergrad at the University of Toronto. She's doing a double major in psychology and economics. And she's originally from Mumbai, and she lives in Toronto since 2017. She loves Netflix like most of us, and a great cup of chai. So I will pass it over to Anara first.
Yeah, everyone. I'm Inara. I just hope you guys can see and hear me. I'm just gonna go through what my journey was coming to Toronto. Initially, when I was applying to universities, I got into most of the universities I did, but when I was trying to decide where should I go, I decided to pick the university which was based on ranking. So it was about U of T. U of T is number one in Canada, even though I had UBC as an option and I had a scholarship from UBC, I decided to go to U of T, which I think was one of the first mistakes that I did, because as they've been saying, like, if someone's giving you free money, take it. So I think when we're deciding where to go for universities, there's a lot of factors that are involved and you should think about. And one of those obviously is that, the scholarship that you're getting, and not really based on rankings, because I thought that if I go to the best university there is, it will help me find a great job afterwards and henceforth. And it does help in some way, but what I've noticed is that what helps further is the experience you have, the skills you have. So if you're getting a scholarship from somewhere, take that, especially if it's for a co-op opportunity, definitely take it, especially if you want to continue staying in Canada after your undergrad. Because when you want to try to when you're trying to look for work, they do look at your work experience more than the university you've been to. They will look at your program, of course, and they will look at your work experiences, and co-op kind of eases it out for you to have just established work experience without actually actively looking for jobs without being in a co-op program. So it helps out a lot. Secondly, especially because they talked about how living in different provinces, living in different cities, it matters what you're doing, where you're staying, and how much it costs. So for me, I thought that residence was much more expensive than just living outside with someone and sharing an apartment, or sharing an apartment with multiple roommates. So I researched upon that, and I decided to take the harder route instead of just, going and living at residence. I thought it was cheaper and much more budget conscious living with someone outside of campus. And yes, there's a lot of difficulties when it comes to finding apartments, because you need to have proper financials. They really don't trust students because, you don't have an active income. So it gets harder to find an apartment that way when you're living outside. And one thing that people usually rely upon is having a guarantor. So if you have or know someone who is in Canada, or furthermore, even in the province that you are living at, that would be perfect, because they can act as your guarantor. That is someone, if you default on your payments, they are a guarantor that they will end up paying for you. So that kind of helps ease out landlords when you're trying to find residences in Canada. But do a lot of research, because the U of T is a big university, and so the costs are much more expensive. However, if you go to another university, probably staying in residence is cheaper than living in the city or outside. So obviously you have to go through everything, research. Do join Ismaili students associations if they exist in your university. I was a part of that. I was its president at U of T last year, and it helps a lot because you meet Ismailis, of course, and you meet a lot of senior students who are in your programs, and they have knowledge about, like, you know, what they've gone through, and so they can help you out after your first year if you're thinking about moving out or just trying to figure out finances. They're always there to help. They're your first link to any education board, any AKZN boards that exist. Obviously, there's Mukhanima, Mukhi Sahib, Kamera Sahib at Jamaat Khanas. But if you want someone who's your age or so, having Ismaili Students Association is a really big plus. And joining them is really nice because you kind of find your own people, you get to know them, and you don't feel as lonely because you're so away from home. Another thing, I did work with ICICI Bank Canada last summer, and one of their options is, or at least one of their products are the credit cards and the bank accounts that they provide to international students. And I was researching their competitors, and you know, the advantages that you have if you go with them or if you go with ICICI. So when you're in India, the best thing is to go with ICICI because there's someone who are in India and you know them, you can talk to them face to face instead of figuring out everything online or talking to Canadian institutions on the call. So one of the budget friendly kind of thing to do is that look at all the different credit card options and the advantages that different banks provide to international students. Personally, I use Scotiabank, and the way it works is that the more I use the credit card, the more points I get. And so I can buy food through the points or go to movies. But I know that CIBC is one that provides grocery payback. So if you do end up living on your own, you can always take an account with them so that when you're buying groceries, you kind of get like cashback and discounts on that. So there's always that option as well, where you know you're trying to figure out what you like, which credit cards you want to work with in terms of what kind of advantages you want. Furthermore, okay, in terms of finding jobs, what I've learned is it's going to definitely be a bit tougher considering you're an international student. There's always going to be the possibility that they're going to give Canadian students a plus or at least an advantage when you're looking for jobs, because they do not know if international students are going to continue to stay in Canada or not, whether they live in the city that you're not, especially with the pandemic going on. I have been currently applying to jobs and it gets tougher. I know some of my friends who've gone back home and are applying from there online, and while they do get interviews, they are asked, where do you live? So where you live also is very considerate, because they want people who are in proximity to the workplace so that the time difference is the same. There's actually no time difference. And in terms of if workspaces become offline again, you can come to the office, and you know, if the flexibility, that shows your flexibility as well to show up there. So in terms of jobs, you really need to fight hard. As I said, having co-ops is a big plus. Do try to get jobs in your summers when you're here. On your study permit, when you are a full-time student, you have 20 hours of part-time work you can do. But when you are not a full-time student, like if you stay back in Canada in the summer, you can work full-time, which is 40 hours a week. So that helps a lot, having summer jobs, because that just means you have Canadian experience. So that's what's really valuable, because even if you have experience in India or any other country, they don't really see that as at the same level of Canadian experience. So what you want to do is gather a lot of Canadian experience before applying to full-time jobs once you graduate or so, or even while you are in university. Having Canadian experience is valued much more than having experience outside. Of course, any experience that you have is better than no experience, but it's always better to have Canadian experience. And that's about it for everything that I could share. If you guys have any other questions or so, you can always reach out to me otherwise, or like when you have the Q&A session. But yeah, thank you so much.
Inara, that was awesome. Your journey's definitely been quite long and you've learned a lot. So thank you for sharing. Our next student testimonial is from Alishan. He's pursuing a Bachelor of Business Administration at Simon Fraser University. And he's very modest, so I don't know what his hobbies are, but I'll let him share those.
Yali Madad. Hope everyone can listen to me, hear me out clearly. Yali Madad to my friends and family in India Jamaat. My name is Alishan. I'm a fourth-year business student at Simon Fraser University, and I'm from Pune, Maharashtra. My journey has been a little bit different than Inara. When you're looking to study abroad, there are a few things that you need to consider, as Aleem and Anis clearly mentioned. But for me, I had a clear path because I took a gap year, and then the whole gap year, after I completed my high school from Aga Khan Academy, Hyderabad, the whole gap year I was just going through various universities and looking at things that I could catch up, or like once you have your financial figure, right? So I compared all the programs that the universities offered, and I came up with few universities. A few are in Toronto, a few are in Vancouver. Then you look into programs that they offer, the cost that they offer, and for me, it all came down to Simon Fraser University. The few reasons that included were the bursaries that they offer. There was a financial support that the university offers, which was great for me because it really helps me every semester to pay a part of the fee. It's not completely covered, but it's like 10%, 15%, whatever it helps, right? It's free money. The second is when you're looking into where you want to go, which city you want to live in, it's good to have connections. It's good to know people because it helps you settle. So Simon Fraser University is based in Vancouver, and I already have my seniors present here in Vancouver. So it was way easier for me to transition from India to Canada and already have a lot of information about a little bit all the information about expenses and costs that I will face in my first year. Obviously, you learn as you go, but you also need that information in your first month or in your first year. That is really helpful, and it can help you a lot to save money. The second advice, or the second task I went through, is once you have your list of universities, colleges ready, research the scholarship or the financials that they offer. And also remember that many of these application deadlines are way earlier. So way before you start your semester, or way before you end up in Canada, you have to apply to those if you are looking into get free money, or if you're looking into apply for scholarship. For me, I did miss the first deadline because I wasn't informed. So I thought it'll be a great idea to share with the Jamaat. In case you guys come across any bursaries or any scholarships that are available after you've gotten into the university or the college that you're planning to attend, make sure to reach out to the team and ask them the deadline. It's usually available on their website, but in case if it's not, and if you have to dig through, it is a good idea to dig through, because that money, the free money, can help you pay 10 to 15% of your school fees at least. Yeah, again, carry out extensive research about the city and the living cost. As mentioned, Vancouver, Toronto are two of the most expensive city to live in. But again, it depends where you live, on campus, off campus, and who you live with, how you live with. For me, again, it's been an easy journey because I was able to live with my friends, and we have been living off campus for 4 years now. It has helped me to save, let's say, 30-40% of my whole living costs. Because if I had to live on campus, I would have paid 30% at least more than what I have paid until now. Right, so that is one thing to keep in mind, and it's actually a good idea to know people before you come here. So if, for example, if 3 or 4 of you are coming from the same city to a same city here in Canada, for example, there are 4 students coming from Mumbai to Vancouver, it's a good idea to connect to each other, know what the plans are, and if you guys can team up and live together in a city, this will be so helpful for you guys, because first thing is you can save a lot of money. Second thing is you start building a family and you start building a sense of family here. You're like, okay, I have my friend here, I have my family here. So you don't feel that lonely, or you don't feel all those challenges, all those mental health challenges are way easier when you have people you know around you. Again, as I said, as already mentioned by Aleem and Anis before, compare cost of living on campus and off campus. It is one of the greatest factors that students miss. I know many students prefer to live on campus because the life is much easier. You have food ready, you have laundry, everything is ready to go. But again, when you're transitioning into a new country, I personally believe facing these challenges has grown me in all the aspects. Everywhere I go, the challenges that I faced by living off campus, by facing these challenges in my day-to-day life, has helped me to grow. And if I have to go tomorrow for an interview, and if they ask me for what are the challenges that you have faced, I can actually list a lot of challenges that I've come through and have helped me to grow into what I am today. Lastly, I just have 2 tips for all the students that are applying. Reach out to students in Canada. Don't be afraid. Everyone here is always willing and loving to help. We are here for a Jamaat in India, and if anyone ever needs help, reach out to students in Canada, because there are so many small costs that you would want to know before you come to Canada, which I wish I mean I was lucky enough to know, and I wish every one of you know before you come, because all those costs at the end of the year could add up to a large sum. So it's better to know these, and this can be known if you reach out to students in Canada and like ask them directly. For example, if you reach out to me and if you need any idea about how the work is, what kind of jobs are available to part-time students, right? And don't expect the jobs to be because it's Canada. Don't expect the jobs to be that great, because sometimes you have to do jobs just to pay your bills, right? And we all have to go through this. So yeah, reach out to me if you have any questions. The second tip is, again, the core program is so important, as Inara mentioned, as Anis mentioned, and as Ali mentioned. It gives you the upper hand already before you graduate. It also helps you to sometimes pay your bills. For example, if your university has allowed you to enter into co-op, and if you have your work permit ready, if you have your study permit ready, right? And if you have your resume and everything placed on, and there's a semester that you feel okay, for example, right now in pandemic, right? You would say, okay, my family back home, or I am not able to financially afford this because of the pandemic going on, businesses are shut. So it's probably a good idea to look for a job, look for an internship, right? I could share my example. Last year, when the pandemic began, my personal finances here in Canada weren't that great. I was a little bit short of money, but therefore I was like, okay, I'm already in the co-op program, so why not take advantage of it? And I was lucky enough to land a job for last 8 months, and I've been working with a logistic company here in Vancouver, which uh, gave me two of the greatest advantages. Right now, it gave me the financial support that I needed. Second, it gave me the experience, the much needed experience that I needed, because I was planning to pursue operations, but because of this co-op, that I know that operations is not my field. I would like to study marketing or MIS, something related to those streams. So yeah, if you're attending any university or any colleges, and if you think there is co-op program, please do it, take advantage of it. And yeah, that's everything that I had to say. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me on LinkedIn, Facebook. I'll be happy to answer. Thank you so much, and please stay safe, everyone in India.
Thank you both for sharing your journey. You know, it's really great to see what you guys have learned along the way, and just provides a little bit more feedback for the future students that are planning their journey. I will say, in my own experience, I couldn't agree more. Living off campus, you get a sense of what the real world is like, and living on campus, it's still a blend between living at home and living on your own. So I'd say rip off the Band-Aid, and if you can do it, you know, figure out how to separate the whites and the colored laundry right away. Anis, just pass it over to you for the final slide for today.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, I think between Inara and Alishan, we couldn't have summarized this whole session better. So thank you both of you for your insight and feedback. And I think it gives a very real world view into what is life like living and studying in Canada. Here on the very last slide, we are sharing some of the resources that are available. I mean, obviously, it's a non-exhaustive list, and we would like you to do a lot of research in that sense. But we would like you to give you a starting point. And some of them are related to scholarships. Some of them are related to budget planning. Some of them are related to immigration and things that you will need to come and study in Canada, and things you will need to prepare for that. And some of them are direct links to the scholarship programs in Canada as well. So please utilize these resources, and we're always here to help and support. And if you have any other questions or concerns, by all means, let us know.
Thank you, Aleem and Anis. Extremely informative session. And this last slide, so there is a lot of queries we can see in the Q&A box. And we are going to spend the next 15 minutes addressing some of those queries. For those of you who don't have your queries answered, we have this help desk. We have just posted the link on the slide. We'll also be posting the link in the chat box. So there are two things you need to do. If you have a specific query, you can go to the help desk and put in your query. And we have a set of counselors in India as well as uh, the folks in Canada will help us out with these queries. There is also a link to a Telegram group that we will be putting in the chat box. This is where we will be putting up the recording of the webinar as well as the slide deck. So I can see a lot of questions on whether the slide deck will be shared. Yes, it will be shared. The recording also will be shared. You need to join the Career Spark Telegram group, and we'll be posting it there in a couple of days. And I can see the Q&A box is buzzing with a lot of questions. So we'll spend the next 10-15 minutes answering them. So going to club some of the questions because I see a lot of similar questions. Also, there are a lot of questions specific to what career to pursue and what specific courses to take up, as well as on things like PR options. Those are beyond the scope of this webinar. So those of you who have specific career queries, I request you to go to the help desk and put it up. Also, as we put it up in the first webinar, in the first slide, we have the next webinar on 22nd May, which will talk about PR and international immigration options for students. So stay tuned for that. And I'll open it up for a few questions. Uh, the first question is, I'm going to club a couple of questions. There is a question from Nikita which says some universities mention non-instruction fees. So there, could you explain what is instruction fees, non-instruction fees, and what are tuition fees, and what are the differences in these? So open to anyone, Anis or Aleem or any of the others, if you could touch upon this one.
Yeah, I think I can speak to that. So when you're looking at university tuition fee and stuff, it's usually is a combination of instructional fee and non-instructional fee. So instruction fee is usually very much geared towards your course, right? So the number of courses you are taking, the number of units of courses you are taking, and the cost that is included in taking that course. Non-instructional fees are sometimes your student union fee, right? Your health insurance fee, your um, uh, uh, different fees that could come that are not necessarily related directly to a course and stuff that are also mandatory for you to pay as part of the overall tuition cost. So those costs would be basically divided between instructional and non-instructional fee.
Thank you, Anis. And there's one more, I would probably say related question is on the concept of tax credit. How does it work, and are tuition fees converted to tax credit? Could you touch upon that?
Aleem, do you want to speak to that one, or I can take that one too?
You go ahead, man.
Okay. So in Canada, when you're filing taxes, there are certain type of tax credits that you can earn based on where they're coming from. And they can actually really help reduce the taxes you end up owing to the government eventually, right? And post-secondary education cost is actually something that can provide you tax benefits, right? So what you basically do is when you're filing your taxes, you can use the cost of the education as tax credits, and that can help minimize some of the taxes that you end up owing to the government. Usually what happens is that when you're working, either you're working through a co-op program or you're actually working on your own while you're in school, your taxes are much lower because your earnings are not that high, right? So a lot of time what people do is they would actually defer these tuition tax credits. So when they graduate and they start earning a little bit bigger income, they would actually go and use their tax credits at that time, because they will actually get a much bigger tax deduction or tax impact. Does it make sense?
Yes. Thanks, Anis. I think that was very useful. Also, there are a few questions which I'm combining. There are a lot of questions on the whole ROI related to education in Canada. So I saw one of the comments saying that the cost is almost 16 million INR for studies in Canada. So what is the typical ROI, and what are the kind of jobs, and how quickly can you expect to get back your returns on that, the amount that you're investing on the education?
That's a very relevant question. I mean, obviously it's a big investment. Education is a big investment. So let's say if you're calling 16 million Indian rupees, that's about 240,000 Canadian dollars, right? A typical undergraduate will start earning, if you basically get the job, I would say somewhere between $40,000 to $60,000 a year at the lower level, right? And somewhere between 80 to 120,000 a year at the higher level, depending on the program, right? And depending on what you graduate out from, right? So if you basically take some of the costs and stuff, if your loans and stuff like that, obviously going to depend on your cash flow, right? What you're going to end up saving out of that money. But it can take you somewhere between 5 to 10 years to basically recover that cost that you've put into your education. And that's very typical of a Canadian student as well, because a lot of Canadian students over here, they take government loans to pay for their schools. And it usually takes somewhere between 5 to 10 years to pay them. So let's say if you started with an income of about, let's say, 60,000 a year, and you're able to save about 20,000 a year, from that, it will take you like a fair bit of time, like almost 12 years to pay 240,000, right?
Sure. Thanks, Anis. The next question, and I think this is something, given that COVID is raging wildly in India, there is a lot of anxiety and a lot of questions around the impact of COVID on the overall education scene and the economy in Canada. So how does that change the game for students who want to go to Canada probably in the next 3 or 4 months? The whole impact of COVID out there.
I can take this one. I would say two things are very important to consider. Is number one, any career that you're looking at, right now, a lot of people are obviously still trying to work from home as much as possible. So, not to say that, the work life will open up eventually, but in the short term, most people are still trying to work from home if possible. The part that's relevant for students is that if you're looking to get a job while you're in school, the jobs that are made for students, they're more in-person jobs, or you have to go to an office, and those jobs are sort of far and far between. Like there's not that many of them, so you just have to be cognizant of that. And then I would say the third thing is that this is just reevaluating people's careers, where technology has become a big part of future careers. So if you're looking at pursuing any sort of education, I would highly recommend that there's some component of technology embedded in your studies, because that is the future of careers. So that's my feedback.
Thank you, Aleem. Another question, again, I think very relevant, and in education board in India, we see this all the time. This is the whole discussion around community colleges. So there are a lot of students who go to community colleges as they are cheaper. But then the whole plan is to spend the first 2 years in a community college and then transfer to a good college and a university later on for the rest of 2 years. So is that a recommended choice, both as a option, as a career option, as well as from the financial aspect of it?
I would say there's nothing wrong with that. I would say you'd probably want to make sure you do all your research to find out if the college, which course you're taking, and does that transfer over to a university? Because if you're taking a course that doesn't transfer over, then I would say that's maybe a little bit more of a question mark. But there's a lot of people that do that, because most colleges I can only speak to Alberta because that's where my research is based, but you should be able to get a diploma and then transfer those courses to a bachelor's program potentially, if you've budgeted appropriately. So it's not a bad option.
Sure, thanks, Salim. Another question, again, a lot of questions on this is probably this is for Inara. How does one become a part of the International Students Association, and how do you reach out to your student counterparts in Canada? Is there any associations they can join, or how does one do that?
All right. So the university has a lot of clubs and associations that you can join. You can usually Google your university's name and then type in clubs and organizations, and there'll be a lot of links that show up. Otherwise, especially if you're a bigger university which has Ismaili Students Association specifically, you should be able to find them as well under clubs and organizations for your university or college. And some of the universities that do have Ismaili Students Association include U of T, UBC, McMaster, Ryerson, almost all the University of Carleton. Yeah, so all of these do include Ismaili Students Association, and most universities, even if they're smaller, include Indian Students Association. So you can always join both of them. The details are usually provided on the university's website if you search up clubs and organizations, and that way you can either reach out to them through email or through their phone number or a website if it's included on the university's website. But that's the best way to find out what clubs and organizations exist at the university and how you can get in touch with them and join them while you are at university.
Thank you, Inara. We'll take the last 2 or 3 questions because we are already at 9:30. One question, I think Anis and Aleem, I'm not sure if this is relevant, but I am taking a chance because you both are financial wizards. There's a question, I'm assuming from a parent. What are the schemes available in India for us to invest and ensure regular savings for education expenses?
That's an Anis question, definitely.
Wow. Unfortunately, I don't know about the markets in India because I've never worked there. But I think I'll just talk a little bit more from a generic perspective in terms of, I think one thing I emphasized quite a bit during my presentation was plan and prepare, right? And if you can just take those values and extrapolate it a little bit more in terms of, if I basically want to go to school, or if my son or my daughter wants to go to school in Canada in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, how much it's going to cost. Now you have a fair bit of an idea based on the resources that we have shared, that how much it's very likely going to cost you after you've done your research in terms of which city, which province they're going to live in, right? And what is the cost of education and tuition is going to be based on the program and the university they're going to go to. Once you have a very clear idea of those expenses, and you've run, like, some of your projected budget sheets and stuff like that, you will come up with a number at the end, which will be the projected cost over 4 years, right? And then what you're going to do is you're going to backtrack a little bit in terms of, okay, if I need to basically save this much amount of money, how much it's going to cost me today to get to that point. Now, you have a very clear idea of what usually the saving rates are and what are they paying in India. You also have a very clear idea of what your timeline is, right? So you need to understand that if your timeline is 1 or 2 years, you're not going to put too much money away into the type of investments where you're taking too much of a risk. So you're trying to be a lot more liquid, you're trying to be a lot more prudent with that approach. But let's say if your timeline is 10, 15 years, you may actually go and take a little bit more chance and diversify those investments and stuff like that, and plan for that education savings, just like we do here in Canada, in terms of registered education saving plans and things like that, right? So it really depends on your timeline. It really depends on your cash flow and your saving rates, and how you are saving it, and what usually the saving rates in India are. But really understand what your future value is, right? So you can discount it back to what the present value needs to be, and then work from there.
Well said, Anis, like a true finance whiz kid. We'll take the last question for the day. I think, again, a very pertinent question, maybe a little generic, but a lot of people asking whether, the pros and cons between going to Canada for your undergraduation or your post-graduation, both from a maybe an ROI perspective as well as other aspects, if somebody could touch upon that.
I guess I could take this one, and Anis can jump in if there's any additional feedback. I would say, you really have to look at it of what's the long-term game plan, right? So the students that I've encountered over my volunteer life is they want to do their undergrad or graduate studies in Canada, but then they eventually would like to go back home and be closer to family, which is no issue at all. But you'd probably have to do a little bit more research. My knowledge is a little bit light on salaries and job prospects in different countries. So you have to look at it as like, if you're going to pay $250,000 in Canadian dollars, and then you're going to earn 20,000 or 30,000 or 50,000 in your home country, that would make it different versus if you were doing it in Canada and potentially you could make 60, 70 or 80,000, it would make a difference. So I guess it depends on where you see yourself long term is important in that conversation. So I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Yeah, I would agree with Aleem with his points as well. I mean, obviously we are not academic advisors, so we can't really speak to whether they should come for undergraduate or graduate courses. But just from a pragmatic perspective, there are certain undergraduate courses which are extremely attractive from a career building perspective, right? Like programs like nanotechnology, which are very, very unique, right? So in that sense, yeah, undergraduate becomes actually a very, very attractive proposition. And in some cases, graduate courses are very, very a lot more attractive because you're probably a little bit more research based, and you want to basically set it up as a path to go for PhD. So depending on what the pathway you're planning to create for yourself, in some cases it might be actually advisable to just do your undergrad in Canada and come to do your undergrad in India and come to do your postgraduate program outside India, kind of thing. So it really depends what the goals and objectives are, the kind of career pathway that you want to create for yourself, the kind of situation you are in financially and stuff, and what makes the most sense, right? If you're just coming to Canada just so that you could be in Canada, may not be the most financially prudent way of doing things.
Thanks, Anis and Aleem. I think that gives a pretty balanced view. I think with that we will come to an end. I can see still see a lot of questions flowing in the Q&A box, and what I've done is in the chat window I've put up a few links. The first link is to the Udaan help desk, so you can write to us with your specific queries, and we'll have a counselor getting back to you. Also, there is a link to a Telegram group called Career Spark, where we keep posting regular information about internships, scholarships, and we will also be posting uh, the slide deck as well as the recording of this webinar in a few days. So watch out for that. And with that, we come to the end of this information packed session. And once again, Anis and Aleem and Inara and Eshan, thank you very much. It's been an extremely engaging and an extremely informative webinar. A lot of queries that have come to us as Education Board in India have been resolved. So extremely grateful to all of you for giving us your time, and look forward to continuing a collaboration with you. Thank you so much. And we'll come to the end of the webinar. Thank you, and good night, and stay safe, everybody. Take care.
Yeah, everyone.
Yali Madat.
Yalimad, everyone.